let me introduce you to two more legislative leaders, each of whom cares deeply about our children and the future of our state. They've agreed to share some of their stories and priorities from the last session and the upcoming one. Senator Alexis Calatayud is in her first term representing District 38, part of Miami-Dade County. She's a former student body president at FIU. She has experience working in the legislature and in the State Department of Education, and has really dedicated her career so far to educational opportunity, really from the birth to 20 space. So thanks for being with us, Senator. And Representative Dana Trabolsi, who's in her second term in the Florida House, representing St. Lucie County. She is chair of the Education Quality Subcommittee and now a two-time Built to Thrive speaker. You may remember a couple of years ago, she joined us when the New World's Reading Initiative passed, which was something you championed, Representative. We are so happy to have you both. I want to start just if you could tell everyone a bit more about you, and Senator, we'll ask you to get started, but tell us about you and what drives your focus on early childhood issues.
Good morning. Thank you so much for the opportunity to participate and to talk about these important issues. I'm a newly elected member of the state Senate, but before I had the privilege to represent my hometown in the legislature, I've dedicated the last decade of my life to finding ways to advocate for education. And that started when I was a college student. And the most pressing issue to my peers around me was the issue of affordability in education. And I was surrounded by young people who were the first in their family to go to college, who came from very low-income backgrounds. More than 60% of the students were on Pell. And we learned that we have to tell our stories. And we have to go up to speak to influencers, to legislators, to those shaping the decisions making our communities, to let them know the impact of quality education that's affordable for everyone. And so I first entered the space of early childhood education and becoming an advocate for early childhood education because of my mentor, Vance Lupus. And I previously lived in this world where it was really about access to higher education was the ticket to change someone's life and to generationally impact a family. And he helped me understand that you have to jump to the beginning to really build the outcomes systemically and structurally that we want, true equity of opportunity for everyone. And so my passion and my interest in policy and early childhood education came from learning so much more of how the beginning will affect the end and will affect the lifetime of a young person, of a student. And so that's really been my catalyst to make sure that my time in the legislature and all advocacy that I participate in. I previously was the director of policy for the Florida Department of Education, where we look at the system from birth to 20. And our responsibility to students and families in Florida begins at birth. So that's my jump into early childhood education and my commitment to make sure that all of us are focused on the continuum.
Great, thank you. Representative Trabolsi, same question to you. Tell us more about who you are and what you bring to this work and why you're drawn to early childhood.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on this panel today. It's such a pleasure to be back. And I think that we can all agree that we are part of the Mutual Admiration Society of Vance Lupus. He's really empowered so many people to just continue to carry the torch for children. And so I can definitely agree with Senator Calatayud that he has been one of the driving forces in my mission to enhance our early childhood issues here in Florida. But primarily, I will tell you that when I was a young mom and my children and I are part of a blended family, we have 4 children. I was just really busy being a mom. And you mentioned earlier, there is no handbook. However, with the team dad, it looks like they actually had a handbook, and that was awesome. I wish we would have had that. We need one for moms too. But I didn't really realize how much we depend on other people to make the decisions for the children in our lives. You're just going through the motions as a parent. And once I had the opportunity to be part of this space in the legislature, I realized that I was one of those people that has the opportunity to affect thousands of lives and families. And I take that very seriously. And coupled on top of that, I am a grandmother to 7 grandbabies, 5 and under. So when we speak of birth to 20, and we also speak of birth to 5 being where you see the most brain development, I can see our work in action every single day. And it is a big responsibility that we have. And so I would say not only is my family the driving force, but because of what I see in them, I see the obligation for what we need to do throughout our state.
So I guess this is the right year to have you when you have 7 grandkids, 5 and under, because if we go to next year, my bet is, one of those is going to turn 6. Anyway.
I'm really hoping for more.
Well, you both are here also as the carriers of the major kid care legislation last year in the House and Senate, respectively. What should this audience know about the legislation you carried last year? And either one of you can start.
I'm happy to start if you like. I'm sure that the majority of people on this panel already understand what Healthy Kids or kid care is, but it allows for the purchase of subsidized health insurance for children that are uninsured or whose incomes are too high to qualify for Medicaid. So they're your working families. These are your ALICE population families. They exceed the federal poverty cap, and they're forced out of the program. And their only option once they're forced out is to pay full bill for child insurance, health insurance. And so that means that their premium could go from $20 a month to almost $260 a month for one child. And to put that in relatable dollars, if a family decides to take a 50-cent raise, that will end up putting that family over a fiscal cliff, and they will end up with over a $2,000 a year deficit in their family. And that is just unacceptable. It is encouraging people to stay in a place that does not help them reach their fullest potential. So with the Florida Kid Care bill, we are increasing the eligibility to 300%. And we're doing that by requiring that we start at the 150% of federal poverty level, and then we create tiers, at least 3, not more than 6, to help families as they're starting to prosper more within their family economics. They can start paying into the subsidized health care without kicking them off the cliff right away.
Awesome. Yeah. And when you talk about that $2,000 deficit, if I was following your math right, it sounds like that's if you only have one child. So we can all imagine what that might look like. Senator, what would you add?
I would say that this is a important step forward on the issue of navigating the social benefit cliffs that are affecting the families that we're focused on serving, and making sure that their children have the greatest access to opportunity possible through high quality education. And you can't start a conversation about high quality education if a child doesn't have access to healthcare. And the same that we would want for all of our own children. So we view this policy in a continuum of policy that needs to be focused on by the legislature to make sure that the most vulnerable families in our community and those families that are doing their best to climb the economic ladder and provide more and more for their children aren't dinged for that effort and don't find a worse outcome at the end. So we hope that this legislation and the implementation that's right now happening, the access for more and more families to high quality healthcare for their kids, acts as a catalyst for greater and greater efforts going forward in different other policy areas. And we hope to provide that So hopefully, fingers crossed, incoming.
Yes, yes. So important as you talk about that this is linked to learning when you're talking about healthcare. Children can't learn when they are not healthy. So that is a good segue too into talking about any early childhood priorities for the coming session. Senator, we'll start with you this time. What's on your plate?
Well, in partnership with my great colleague, Representative Trabulsi, something very, very important to me is navigating well Florida's challenge with social benefit fiscal cliffs. Kid care and the issue of subsidized health insurance is definitely one of those pieces. But when we look at a family who cannot accept increased economic mobility, increased wages, because they substantially lose a number of benefits, that's a massive problem. So for me, I want to spend my time in the legislature reimagining systems that do not serve Florida's families and do not serve Florida's economic future. I think an important piece of that puzzle is as the minimum wage increases across the state for the next 3 years, we're going to see an enormous decrease in families that are eligible for school readiness and eligible for what they need to go to work, which is a safe place and an enriching place for their child to learn and to grow while they're putting food on the table. And I think this will be a wholesale effort by the time we get to 2026, but we endeavor over the next several years to very seriously consider what needs to be done to ensure that our children have access to high quality education and have a safe place to grow up while their parents are working 1-2 jobs, trying to make ends meet in an incredibly high inflation setting and an incredibly challenging housing market across the state, on top of so many other factors. But this is heavy on my agenda for this legislative session and going forward, because we need to think not just about the importance of early childhood education. I'm really compelled by the dynamic at play for the workforce that can bring folks into the conversation that otherwise wouldn't be early childhood education advocates. And so there's multi layers to the argument and the rationale to make sure that we're providing greater access and affordability to families.
Absolutely. And you saw your colleague, Representative McFarland, show her face for a moment. She'll be digging into more of that on our next panel with Kyle Baltic from the chamber. Representative Trabulsi, over to you. Tell us about your priorities. I know the senator mentioned you are working closely again this year, but want to hear from you as well.
Yes, and it's really hard to follow that because everything she said is spot on. We have child care issues and we have workforce issues, and they go hand in hand. And I look forward to hearing Representative McFarland's panel next, because she has been a champion in this area, and I know she's going to continue to be this year as well. But I would also agree with what Senator Grahl said in her video, meaning we're never going to be done in this space. But we also might need to just slow down a little bit and see what works, because so often we continue to put things in action, we legislate, and we don't often think about how it is affecting the people on the ground that are actually doing the work. And we also don't often see the fruits of our labor except through testing. And so I think that just to slow down a little bit and figure out what's working and what's not working, and celebrate our victories and redirect in areas that need to be redirected is vital to what we do. Just because we can pass legislation doesn't mean we always need to pass legislation. But I would like to just mention a little bit about school readiness. So currently the state draws down every federal dollar for the state's subsidized child care program, school readiness. But based on new federal guidelines, the state's going to have some constraints in funding. And the Florida Chamber estimates that the rising that raising the school eligibility to 200%, as Senator Grahl mentioned, is going to be a lot of money. It's projected to be over $1 billion. So in concert with Senator Kaladiud, doing something similar to what we did addressing the fiscal cliff with Florida Kid Care might be a solution that we could work towards with school readiness. And I look forward to teasing that out over the next few months and see how far we can get with it.
That's great. I mean, reading between the lines, it sounds like you're each saying, you know, we care about childcare access for families. We care about childcare as a tool for economic mobility, and that's something that was resonating in the chat. If you saw that popping up from some of our participants, and that you understand how interconnected these issues are. So I know we are still in committee weeks. We come into session in January. We thank you so much for your time today and look forward to seeing as bills are filed. I'll ask you each just for one final word of how are you feeling going into session this January?
I'm pumped. I love session, and I love the dynamics of working with our partners, our colleagues in the Senate and our colleagues in the House, to see what we can get for families. And I absolutely love how it changes day to day, and our ability to kind of shift and collaborate, glue things together, tear things apart. And I'm really optimistic for the conversations that have been having within both chambers, within leadership, education, advocacy, and acknowledgement of challenges, and seeing where it goes, to Representative Walsey's point.
Awesome. Pumped and optimistic. How about you, Representative?
I am so excited. I'm that cheesy person that just cannot wait to get back to Tallahassee. If I've said it once, I've said it 1,000 times. This is something I never thought I would do. And now it's something I can't imagine not doing. And I feel blessed every day to have the opportunity to do it. And I take it really seriously, probably too seriously sometimes, but it is such a great honor. And it's going to be a great session. Every year, I feel a little bit stronger, like I can carry a little bit more. My knowledge base is overflowing, and I'm excited.
Awesome. Well, thank you both so much.